The atmosphere inside the Jonathan Ross Show studio felt electric long before Gordon Ramsay took his seat. The audience buzzed with excitement, expecting sharp wit, playful insults, and culinary humor. Gordon arrived confident, exchanging smiles and jokes, yet there was an edge to his energy that hinted something unpredictable might happen. From the first exchange, it was clear this would not be a routine celebrity interview. Jonathan Ross opened with light-hearted banter, teasing Gordon about his fiery reputation and famous on-screen outbursts. The crowd laughed as Gordon fired back with sarcastic charm, embracing his public persona. Still, beneath the humor, his responses felt unusually sharp, as if patience was already wearing thin. The laughter masked a growing tension that slowly crept into the room. As the conversation shifted toward Gordon's television career and harsh judging style, Jonathan pushed a little harder than usual. He questioned whether Gordon's anger was genuine or exaggerated for ratings. Gordon smiled at first, but his eyes told a different story. The question struck a nerve, and the tone of his voice changed just enough for the audience to notice. Gordon leaned forward, explaining that passion in the kitchen isn't an act, but the standard. He spoke intensely about discipline, respect, and excellence, emphasizing that food is personal. Jonathan attempted to lighten the moment with a joke, but it landed awkwardly. The audience's laughter faded quicker this time, replaced by an uneasy silence. The exchange grew more direct as Jonathan suggested that Gordon's temper sometimes crossed the line into unnecessary cruelty. Gordon's jaw tightened. He responded firmly, defending his methods and pointing out the difference between honesty and hand-holding. His words were controlled, but the heat behind them was unmistakable, like a pot beginning to boil over. Cameras captured Gordon gesturing sharply, his voice rising just enough to cut through the studio. He questioned why strong personalities were celebrated in some industries but criticized in kitchens. Jonathan tried to interject, but Gordon continued, clearly frustrated by what he saw as a double standard. The tension now dominated the room. Audience members exchanged glances as the playful mood dissolved. This was no longer cheeky banter between host and guest. Gordon spoke about years of hard work, pressure, and sacrifice, insisting that success doesn't come from comfort. His intensity filled the space, making even the band unusually quiet. Jonathan attempted to regain control, reminding Gordon that the show was meant to be fun. That comment only fueled the fire. Gordon snapped back that passions shouldn't be dismissed as entertainment. His voice echoed slightly louder, drawing a collective gasp from the crowd as the confrontation reached a new level. What made the moment explosive wasn't just volume, but conviction. Gordon's frustration poured out, not as rage, but as a refusal to be trivialized. Jonathan's smile faded as he realized the interview had slipped beyond his control. The studio felt frozen, suspended in an uncomfortable but captivating moment. Producers backstage watched nervously as Gordon continued, questioning media narratives and public judgment. He insisted that criticism often ignores context and effort. Jonathan tried to pivot, but Gordon wasn't finished. The clash of personalities now felt inevitable, like two unstoppable forces colliding under studio lights. The audience sat in stunned silence as Gordon's tone sharpened further. He challenged Jonathan directly, asking whether honesty was only acceptable when it was polite. The question hung heavily in the air. Jonathan paused, choosing his words carefully, aware that every second was unfolding live. When Jonathan finally responded, his tone was firm but restrained. He reminded Gordon of boundaries and respect on the show. Gordon laughed bitterly, shaking his head, clearly unimpressed. That reaction drew a mix of gasps and nervous laughter, signaling the point of no return. Gordon stood slightly from his seat, gesturing with visible frustration. His words came faster now, driven by emotion rather than performance. The audience sensed the shift from debate to breakdown. Jonathan signaled subtly toward the side of the stage, a move not lost on attentive viewers. Security and producers hovered just out of frame as Gordon continued speaking. Jonathan attempted to close the segment early, thanking Gordon for coming. Instead of calming things, the gesture felt dismissive. Gordon's expression hardened, and his response cut sharply through the studio. He accused the format of oversimplifying real passion into sound bites. His voice wasn't screaming, but it carried authority and anger. The audience realized they were witnessing something raw and unscripted, a moment no rehearsal could have predicted. Jonathan finally stood, firmly stating that the conversation was over. The tension peaked as Gordon looked around the studio, clearly weighing his next move. The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of studio equipment. With a sharp exhale, Gordon made a final statement about respect and walked away from his chair. Gasps rippled through the crowd as producers stepped in. Jonathan's expression remained composed, but the shock was evident. Gordon was escorted toward the exit, still visibly heated, while the audience watched in disbelief. Some applauded nervously, others sat frozen. The moment felt surreal, unfolding faster than anyone could process. Cameras cut briefly as Jonathan addressed the audience, attempting to smooth the situation. His voice was calm, but the tension lingered. Everyone knew they had just witnessed a rare and volatile clash. Backstage reports later described Gordon as frustrated but resolute, standing by every word he said. The confrontation wasn't about ego, but about how passion is perceived and portrayed. That distinction would soon fuel online debate. Clips from the show spread rapidly across social media, sparking intense discussion. Some praised Gordon for standing his ground, others criticized his lack of restraint. The phrase "kicked off" quickly dominated headlines, amplifying the drama. Fans dissected every expression, every pause, searching for clues about who crossed the line. The unscripted nature of the moment made it endlessly replayable. It felt real in a way television rarely does. Media commentators weighed in, debating whether the incident reflected Gordon's temperament or media provocation. Jonathan's role was scrutinized just as heavily. The confrontation became larger than either man. What stood out most was how quickly entertainment turned into confrontation. One question shifted the entire energy of the room. It was a reminder of how fragile live television can do when strong personalities collide. The audience members who were there later described the moment as uncomfortable but unforgettable. It wasn't shocking for spectacle's sake, but because it stripped away performance and revealed emotion. Gordon's reputation as a fiery figure only intensified after the incident. Yet many supporters argued that the eruption showed authenticity, not aggression. The debate highlighted how differently passion can be interpreted. Jonathan Ross' show continued, but the episode became defined by that single moment. It overshadowed jokes, segments, and planned laughter. Everything else faded into the background. In hindsight, the confrontation symbolized the broader clash between media tone and personal truth. Gordon refused to soften his reality for comfort. Jonathan upheld the structure of his show. The fiery exchange left a lasting impression on viewers, proving that even polished television can fracture under real emotion. It challenged expectations of celebrity interviews and reminded audiences of their unpredictability. In the end, Gordon Ramsay being kicked off the show became more than a headline. It became a moment where passion, pride, and television collided, leaving behind a lasting reminder that not every fire can be contained by studio lights. In the hours following the broadcast, insiders hinted that the tension had been building even before cameras rolled. Gordon had reportedly expressed concerns about how the interview might frame his personality, while producers assured him it would remain lighthearted. That gaps between expectation and reality made the confrontation feel less sudden and more like an overdue release of frustration. Viewers replaying the footage noticed subtle warning signs early in the interview. Gordon's clipped answers, Jonathan's sharper teasing, and the audience's hesitant laughter all suggested a shift that was easy to miss in the moment. With hindsight, the eruption felt almost inevitable, as if both the men were circling a point neither wanted to reach. Social media reactions exploded within minutes, splitting audiences into passionate camps. Supporters argued Gordon was unfairly provoked and praised his refusal to be reduced to a caricature. Critics countered that walking off a show crossed professional lines. The debate itself kept the clip trending, ensuring the moment stayed alive far beyond its airtime. Media experts pointed out how live television magnifies emotion. Without the safety net of editing, every pause and reaction becomes part of the narrative. Gordon's intensity, usually edited for dramatic effect in cooking shows, appeared raw and uncontrolled here, challenging viewers to reconsider the difference between performance and reality. Jonathan Ross later addressed the incident carefully, emphasizing respect for guests while defending the boundaries of the show. His measured response contrasted sharply with the chaos viewers had witnessed, reinforcing how hosts must balance openness with control. That balance, once broken, proved difficult to restore in real time. The incident also reignited conversations about Gordon's legacy. For some, it confirmed the authenticity behind his tough exterior. For others, it reinforced criticisms of volatility. Either way, the confrontation added another layer to a public persona already defined by intensity. Fans who attended the taping described the atmosphere afterward as strangely quiet. Laughter returned, but it felt forced, as if the room was still processing what had happened. The unscripted nature of the moment lingered, casting a shadow over the rest of the episode. Commentators noted that the phrase kicked off simplified a far more complex situation. Gordon wasn't removed mid-rant, but escorted after a breakdown in communication. That nuance was often lost in headlines, which favored drama over detail. The clip began circulating alongside past moments of tense celebrity interviews, placing this confrontation within a larger pattern of live TV unpredictability. Each comparison reinforced the idea that no matter how polished a show appears, human emotion can always disrupt the script. For aspiring chefs and creatives, Gordon's outburst sparked reflection on passion and perception. Many related to the frustration of having dedication misunderstood as aggression. The moment resonated beyond entertainment, touching on workplace expectations and respect. The confrontation also exposed the limits of humor as a buffer. Jokes that once softened Gordon's image failed under pressure, revealing how quickly levity can collapse when core values feel challenged. That breakdown made the moment uncomfortable, but undeniably real. Weeks later, the episode continued to surface in discussions about celebrity boundaries. Where does honest expression and disruption begin? Gordon's walk-off became a case study in that gray area, fueling debate rather than offering clear answers. Despite the controversy, the moment humanized both men. Gordon appeared less like a television persona and more like someone defending deeply held beliefs. Jonathan appeared less like a playful host and more like a gatekeeper of format and order. The lasting impact of the confrontation wasn't measured in outrage alone, but in reflection. Viewers questioned their own expectations of celebrities, wondering how much authenticity they truly allow before discomfort sets in. Ultimately, the fiery exchange settled into television history as a reminder that real emotion can't always be contained. Gordon Ramsay being kicked off the Jonathan Ross show became less about spectacle and more about the fragile line between passion and performance under unforgiving studio lights. As time passed, the confrontation began to feel less like a scandal and more like a mirror reflecting the pressures placed on public figures. Gordon's intensity was no longer viewed only as aggression, but as the visible cost of years spent defending standards in a world that often prefers comfort over excellence. That shift in perception softened some criticism and deepened the conversation. Fans revisiting the episode noticed how quickly control slipped once emotions surfaced. Jonathan's attempts to steer the conversation back to humor highlighted the limits of format when authenticity breaks through. The moment revealed how fragile the balance is between entertainment and truth, especially when neither side is willing to retreat. Industry insiders later suggested that the show's producers faced a difficult decision in how to handle the aftermath. Editing the episode too heavily risked accusations of censorship, while leaving it intact invited controversy. Their choice to preserve most of the exchange allowed viewers to form their own judgments. The confrontation also sparked discussion about respect across professions. Gordon argued from the perspective of craftsmanship and discipline, while Jonathan represented a culture of irony and lightness. Neither approach was wrong, but the clash exposed how differently passion is expressed and received. Online forums filled with personal stories from viewers who related to Gordon's frustration. Many shared experiences of being labeled difficult when simply demanding quality. The moment transcended celebrity gossip, becoming a touchstone for conversations about standards, leadership, and misunderstanding. Critics noted that Gordon's refusal to soften his stance was risky but revealing. In an era where image is carefully managed, his walk-off felt almost defiant. That defiance resonated with audiences tired of polished apologies and scripted resolutions. Jonathan's role was also reassessed, with some praising his composure under pressure. Hosting live television requires quick judgment, and his decision to end the segment reflected a commitment to structure. That firmness, while controversial, underscored the responsibilities that come with controlling a public platform. The incident lingered in pop culture because it resisted a simple villain narrative. Both men appeared principled, both flawed, and both human. That complexity made the moment worth revisiting, inviting deeper thought rather than easy outrage. Over months, references to the confrontation appeared in interviews, podcasts, and commentary about live TV risks. It became shorthand for what happens when authenticity collides with format. The phrase "that Ramsey moment" carried weight beyond a single episode. For Gordon, the incident reinforced his reputation as someone unwilling to dilute conviction for comfort. For Jonathan, it reaffirmed the importance of boundaries in unpredictable environments. The clash, though brief, left a lasting imprint on how celebrity interviews are perceived. Viewers who initially felt shocked later described feeling grateful for the honesty. The discomfort forced reflection, proving that not all memorable television is designed to amuse. Sometimes it challenges, unsettles, and stays with you. The studio audience's reaction continued to fascinate analysts. Their silence spoke volumes, showing collective awareness that something real was happening. That shared pause became one of the most powerful elements of the exchange. As years pass, the confrontation is likely to be remembered less for who walked off and more for what was revealed. It exposed the cost of passion, the limits of humor, and the courage required to stand firm under scrutiny. Gordon Ramsay being kicked off the show ultimately symbolized the breaking point where a performance gave way to principle. It reminded audiences that behind every persona is a person navigating expectations, pressure, and pride. In the broader story of television, the fiery confrontation stands as a quiet warning and an honest lesson. When strong personalities meet unfiltered emotion, the result may be uncomfortable, but it can also be unforgettable, leaving behind truth long after the cameras stop rolling. In later discussions, commentators noted how the confrontation exposed a deeper question about authenticity in entertainment. Audiences often demand realness, yet recoil when it appears without polish. Gordon's reaction challenged viewers to confront that contradiction, forcing them to ask whether they truly want honesty or only a controlled version of it. The moment also became a lesson in power dynamics on television. As a guest, Gordon brought star power and authority, but the host controlled the environment. When those roles clashed, the imbalance became visible, revealing how quickly respect can fracture when control and conviction collide. Some fans argued that the walk-off wasn't an exit of defeat but of self-preservation. Gordon chose to leave rather than continue a conversation he felt misrepresented his values. That choice reframed the narrative for many, turning what looked like rejection into an assertion of boundaries. Media psychologists later weighed in, explaining how public figures under constant scrutiny often carry bottled frustration. A single comment can trigger an emotional release that seems disproportionate but is rooted in long-term pressure. Gordon's eruption fit that pattern, making the moment more understandable, if still controversial. The confrontation also influenced how future guests approached the show. Observers noticed a slight shift in tone, with interviews feeling more cautious and structured. The incident served as a reminder that unpredictability, while compelling, carries real consequences. For viewers, the exchange offered a rare glimpse behind the curtain of celebrity polish. Gordon's vulnerability, masked by intensity, revealed the emotional cost of maintaining a public persona. That exposure blurred the line between character and individual. Discussions online began focusing less on blame and more on communication. Could the clash have been avoided with different phrasing or timing? The endless replays turned the moment into a case study in dialogue gone wrong. The audience's reaction remained one of the most analyzed aspects. Their quiet attention showed instinctive awareness that this wasn't performative drama. Silence became a sign of respect, signaling that even entertainment spaces can hold space for seriousness. Gordon's defenders emphasized that passion often looks aggressive to those who don't share it. They argued that the kitchen world demands urgency and precision, traits that don't always translate well to relaxed studio environments. That cultural gap played a key role in the misunderstanding. Critics, however, maintained that professionalism requires adaptability. They questioned whether Gordon's refusal to adjust crossed into inflexibility. That tension between adaptation and authenticity fueled ongoing debate. The confrontation also highlighted the risk hosts take when pushing boundaries for engaging content. A sharper question can spark insight or ignite conflict. Jonathan's approach demonstrated how fine that line can be. Over time, the incident became shorthand in media circles for the unpredictability of live television. Producers referenced it when discussing contingency plans, acknowledging that no amount of preparation can fully control human emotion. Gordon's walk-off entered pop culture memory not as a single outburst, but as a layered moment open to interpretation. That ambiguity kept it alive, resurfacing whenever discussions about passion and professionalism emerged. Viewers who revisited the clip years later often saw it differently, noticing nuance missed in the initial shock. What once felt explosive began to feel reflective, a snapshot of two worlds briefly colliding. In the end, the moment endured because it refused to be simple. Gordon Ramsay being kicked off the Jonathan Ross show became a story about boundaries, identity, and the cost of passion, reminding audiences that the most lasting television moments are rarely the most comfortable ones.